Establish that you compliment people, you catch them doing good over and over and over and over. Establish that as your culture. We recognize good. We clearly state what is good or what is excellent. And so you know what standard you're going to be held to, because we're constantly acknowledging the good and the excellent. So be that.
Every year, millions of attraction visitors lose hours in line instead of making memories.
Since its inception, accesso's virtual queuing has saved more than 4.5 billion, yes, that is billion with a B, minutes of wait time, freeing guests to pack their day with more rides, eats, and excitement.
The result? Happier guests who spend more and a better bottom line for you.
Ready to turn waits into wins? Visit accesso.com/ROI clinic.
The queues are virtual. The results are real.
Welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast, where we discuss the latest trends and challenges facing the attractions industry today.
We chat with some of the top leaders in the field and provide resources that will help develop your career in this great industry.
I am Josh Liebman. I am obsessed with the guest experience and helping attractions make that their top priority for success.
And I'm Matt Heller. I am passionate about organizational effectiveness, leadership development, and employee engagement.
Now sit upright, hold on tight, and get ready for the Attraction Pros podcast.
Hey, Matt, how's it going?
It's going fantastically, Josh. How are you?
Doing great. Question for you.
Yes.
How would you define the word kindness?
By being kind. No, you can't use the word in the definition. I would say it's about, if I was to do a short definition, it's really about thinking about other people and how you impact them and how you can help them be better in some way, right? What do you think? How's that?
I agree. I think that's
Okay.
pretty good definition. Yeah.
Off the top of my head. How about you? How would you define it?
Well, the same.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm thinking of something that is genuine. I think of, authenticity and perhaps caring, fits into it, or caring about the well-being of others, and the actions that you take that reflect that probably tie in a lot with that. The reason I bring it in is because, the word kindness, or even just the way that we define it, even you and I have just said, okay, well, what if we piece together kind of, these components of it? On the surface, it seems very simple. It sounds very simple, and it's probably in many cases implemented with simplicity. And when we think about kind team members and we think about kind managers, are we really seeing the full essence of what that means? And so the reason I bring that up and the reason I ask that is because our guest today is Nathan Caldwell, and his whole passion is about empowering kindness. And I'll say that his definition, while it would probably align with ours, can go far deeper into any definition of the word kindness that I've ever heard previously.
Which is good because he literally wrote the book about empowering kindness. So he's got a lot to say on the subject. He's got a lot to say very passionately about the subject. And, one of the things that he kind of channels his kindness into is developing leaders. And he works with a lot of organizations where they are developing leaders, whether they're seasonal leaders or full-time or executives, and really using that kindness framework to basically explain what's the right thing to do as a leader. What is the thing that you are supposed to be doing at this moment? Is it to have a conversation that may not be very comfortable? That can still fall under kindness in his definition, right? Or is it celebrating someone that did something great, celebrating a win? That can also be kindness, but we can't mistake just blanket niceness for kindness.
Yeah, yeah. When it comes to talking about difficult conversations, there was even part of this interview that turned into, I would say, part workshop, maybe part
Yes.
therapy session as well, of kind of reflecting on some previous coaching and leadership and development sessions and really breaking down why they worked so well. And we also get to hear his thoughts on the maybe popular, but maybe popular for the wrong reasons, compliment sandwich, which I remember learning on in my early days of leadership development. And I think his alternative definitely beats it in every single way. And one of the things too is we talk about the intentionality of leadership as well. And he used the phrase beating the calendar in many instances, and that when maybe we're a little too complacent, we sweep things under the rug. And from that, that's when it builds up and, well, it becomes a trip hazard, essentially. And it turns into something that is much bigger. But if we focus on the intentionality, we get in front of it, we beat the calendar, have those uncomfortable conversations, layer it in with kindness all throughout. Everybody wins from it. There's individual benefits from it. There's corporate benefits to it. There's health benefits to it as well. This was just such a fascinating conversation.
So is it time to dive deeper into kindness than either of us have ever dove in the past?
Let's do it.
Hey, Nathan, welcome to the Attraction Pros podcast. How you doing today?
I'm doing awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Very excited to be here.
We are excited to have you, excited to jump into all things that you can tell us about whatever you want to tell us. And let's start with sort of your career and your history in the industry.
Yeah, so back when I was in college, my summer job was working for a vacation resort right on the north side of Lake Erie in Canada. Just a couple minutes. Some of you may be familiar with the old theme park Crystal Beach in Ontario, Canada, that shut down in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. So this vacation resort, just a minute or two from that location. And so all summer long, all day long and all night long, I'd be on stage performing for people that are on vacation. And a lot of people stay there all summer long. And so we get to know the guests in a very familiar way. And I was in charge of things like campfire sing-alongs with their mascot, Bradley Bear. And so singing, dancing, performing. I was in all kinds of variety shows, hosting trivia, hosting band nights with like top 40s bands and cover artists. At one point, too, there was even a Backstreet Boys cover band. And after I worked with them and they did their performance and stuff, their agent came up to me and said, "Hey, we're starting a second group. Would you be our Brian?" And I said, "I don't know if I could live my life flaring my nostrils. I can do it a little, but I can't do it 24/7. And so I turned down the offer, but now here I am. So that was kind of like my first real job. And I just fell in love with performing and growing up, going to theme parks all the time. Like I said, heading out to Crystal Beach, up to Canada's Wonderland, Darien Lake, all there. And even as a kid, got to visit Dollywood. And so as a dad now of 4 kids, we live in the Tampa Bay area. And so we're constantly going to Busch Gardens. We're over at Disney, not as much lately because we've actually switched into Universal because my kids are big Harry Potter fans now. And so we're always going to theme parks. We're always up into the Smokies to visit Dollywood and stuff like that. And so in my career, I've done a lot of leadership training and executive coaching and company culture activities throughout major acquisitions for companies. And so speaking about the culture within a company and how to treat others, my heart immediately went back to theme parks and wanting to be of service to different theme parks and attractions because I'm bringing my kids there. And so I want the people that are there to do a great job and feel good doing the great job that they're doing, because they're providing such awesome experiences. Some of my happiest memories of childhood is getting to go to a theme park. And so I want to be part of that giving back, of helping people to see it through the eyes of what they're actually delivering for their guests.
Very interesting. I can't wait to dive more into this here, but curious as far as kind of connecting the dots to that first job performing at that resort in Ontario on Lake Erie, and then thinking about what you do now. Do you have a lot of callbacks to that time period and thinking about maybe great examples, or could maybe even be not so great examples that feed into everything you're doing today in terms of leadership coaching?
Yeah, I think so much of like the energy life cycle, almost like the water cycle, where you have water and it evaporates and then you need it to come back together and come on back down. And that's what performers go through. And I think of, almost everybody at an attraction, if they're interacting with guests, they have to have that performer energy of, living out the culture of that experience. The rides don't just operate themselves. The food doesn't just serve itself. People don't just look at the map and that's it. They just do their own thing. There's going to be guests interacting with the faces of the attraction, of the theme park. And so they are on stage. They're bringing that culture to life. And it takes a lot of energy and a lot of positivity. And so this idea of the energy life cycle, if they have leaders who are pulling them in a separate direction, because the guests are pulling energy from them, and if the leaders are also pulling them in the opposite direction and not filling them back up, they end up being like that Stretch Armstrong's toy. And so you need to have leaders who are filling you back up with energy. And sometimes, unfortunately, leaders aren't given that coaching moment in their career of recognizing that they can't just be great at a task or great at directing people to do a task. They must be great at filling people up with energy. And so, Josh, when you bring that up, like, what lessons do I bring from my time of being on stage all day, every day, and performing? It's that I need to know that every single person needs leaders who fill them up with energy, who recharge them, who help them to get back out there and keep doing an amazing job for their guests.
So Nathan, if we could take that a step further, then if you look at an organization and you've got, let's say, your frontline team members who are out there interacting with your guests and their leaders are pouring energy into them, then it's got to be like that bucket thing, right? Where you've got people pouring energy into those leaders, and then those leaders need energy and things like that. So where do the leaders get their energy if they're supposed to be pouring it into others? Like, is there another piece of that cycle that they need to know about?
Yeah, absolutely. I actually wrote a small story about this, a fable about apple trees. And the idea is that at a certain time in the growth of an apple tree, it has to be able to sustain things on their own, where it knows what nutrients it needs, it can absorb it themselves. But there is a stage early on in the apple tree's life where it needs protection. Like it's not going to survive just on its own. And so you have, greenhouses to help them grow for a while where they're protected from outside sources. And that's where, like, young people and young inexperience are needing a little bit of shelter, a little bit of protection from their leaders. But then at a certain point, you have to grow into a mature tree where you are strong enough and capable enough to replenish yourself. And oftentimes, though, leaders find it to be very lonely to do that. And that's where I often encourage leaders to go outside of just their organization and to find peers in the industry who are also in kind of those lonely roles, and to connect and share, to be vulnerable with one another, to set goals with one another and be accountable to one another for achieving those goals. And then also to be inwardly reflective, to know what recharges you. And so to be educating yourself through leadership books or leadership activities where you are attending webinars, you're listening to podcasts like this so that you can boost yourself and get that energy back. But it's all individual leaders need to know what replenishes them and to explore that, to find that. It might be that you get replenished by like having some alone time, going for a walk in the woods or drinking a black cup of coffee or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a fancy soda. And I know we're going to get to that later, but the idea of knowing what works for you to replenish that energy and to recognize, whoa, wait a second, I'm depleted right now. I need to plug myself back in to recharge.
With everything that you're saying here, are there specific nuances that are maybe relatively unique to the attractions industry in the way that our industry operates? And, we talk about that hierarchy and departmental structure and leaders who are supporting their frontline team members in a fast-paced environment with very much front of house, guest facing, very unique compared to, so many other industries. What about it is specific, I would say, to attractions, or is it all the same regardless of the industry?
So yes and no. Yes, and we'll do a little drama activity. So yes, because we're all people, and you're going to find similar personality types within every industry. You're going to have the people who you might classify as lions, that are like task oriented and very much extroverts. And so they are charged up, they're energized by getting things done, straight to the point. Let's tackle that. Let's solve a problem. Let's move on. You're going to have people who are more extroverted, but relationship driven, like a happy parrot who needs the fun and the conversation, and they need to connect with people in order to feel as though things are progressing forward. Or you might have on the introvert side somebody who is introverted and task driven, who like don't want any attention, don't want the rah, but they just want to get stuff done and be left alone. And then you could have people, though, who are relationship driven, but very much on the introvert side, who are more focused on deep relationships. They don't want the loudness of the, take charge lion who is just focused on getting things done. They need somebody to quietly come to them, let them know that they value them, that they understand, that they value relationships, and then give them the opportunity to also work at a pace that they're comfortable with. And so, yes, like all of those types of personalities exist in every industry. I think one of the big differences, though, in the attractions world is many organizations operate on a seasonal calendar. And so you have unique challenges of closures for a certain time, and also that ramps up a high turnover rate because people can't always stick around for that quiet time in their paycheck life. They can't always. And you're just going to find people that then seek outside opportunities. And so I think that is a unique thing in the attractions world. I think also a unique thing in the attractions world is just there is so much in the public eye for guest expectations that keeps hyping it up higher and higher and higher. And so the bar every single year, every season, or every time, there's a viral trend on social media, it's like the bar gets set even higher. And it can feel unfair to people. to those who are expected to meet the expectations of guests. But, in saying that, I also want to disagree with myself, because there's no bar that is higher than the bar of nostalgia, of somebody who went there when they were a kid and now they're bringing their kids back. And so you have this foggy memory of only the good stuff and things being much huger. It's like the kid who comes back as an adult to their childhood home and they're like, I remember my bedroom being a lot bigger than it was. And you're like, yeah, we had the walls shrunk in. It was a lot of money, but we think it was worth it, right? To make it feel more cozy. Like, your memories of how things were as a kid and now bringing your kids back, there's no higher bar set than that. And so you do have high expectations for your people. And so it is a huge challenge. In other industries, the expectations may not be as high, yet with social media and oftentimes customer service going public, in the sense of people can tweet or people can make a comment live on Facebook, and customer service has to have a public facing comment and response to that. Like, the bars for customer interaction is just higher in all industries right now as well. So yes and no, but a lot of yes.
Well, I would say yes and no and maybe. And I think there's also another layer in there. I know you work with a lot of leaders and you write about leadership, and we definitely want to get into your book here in just a minute. But there was something that you were discussing there that I think we can dive into a little deeper, and that is the seasonality of leadership development. Because I mean, you know it, I know it, Josh knows it, everybody listening knows it, that it takes a long time to really develop those proper leadership skills. And how do I pour myself into someone else while also being able to sustain myself? So can you talk a little bit about, maybe this is one of those unique things about the seasonality of a lot of businesses, even if they're open year round, there's still a seasonal ebb and flow. Can you talk a little bit about those challenges and maybe some solutions that you've come up with that can help bring people along and develop those leaders in that seasonal business?
Yeah, the biggest thing is to not buy into the myth that if people are there, they'll get the experience they need. Because you have to beat the calendar. You have to win against the calendar. Intentionality is the only way to do it. And so you have to plan out the leadership development program that you want people to have. They aren't just going to happen and stumble into every experience that you hope they get over a season or over a year, so that then they come in the next season with the amount of preparedness and or experience that you hope they had in any given situation. So I'll use the example of like difficult conversations. That's a big one, where everybody, no matter what industry you're in, they want their leaders to be capable of having difficult conversations with the people they lead. And that is, no matter what industry you're in, a area where we are falling short, because it's so uncomfortable. Like, if I said to you guys, hey, let's have a podcast. Yeah, I want to be on it. And I just want to have difficult conversations with you. You guys are going to be like, oh no, that's going to take a lot out of us. Like, we want to have an enjoyable conversation because you're a guest and, our brand is at stake. And so you don't want people turning off partway through because they're like, eesh, that was uncomfortable. And that is what people shy away from, is what's uncomfortable, what they aren't prepared for, what they don't have experience in. And so you can't just cross your fingers and say, I hope, or I think that over this next season, this individual will get better at difficult conversations. And so you must be intentional. If you want them to get better at it, well, schedule time to talk about what those are. What are the types of difficult conversations that you predict that they need to be ready for before stepping into a supervised role? And, oftentimes people will look at that and they'll see situations where when people step into a supervisor role and they don't have that experience, problems get swept under the rug and they build up and build up until they become an actual, like, real offense where you have to then either fire somebody or you have to have a serious talking to the leader who didn't address it in the first place. And it can get to very difficult circumstances that way. And so if you sweep it under the rug, you never address it, pretty soon you're going to trip over it. Now, it could go the opposite way, where people, instead of sweeping it under the rug, they go directly to HR, the very first offense that somebody has, and they just say, I don't want to deal with this problem, so fire them, get them out of here so we don't have to address it. And so you cannot set people up to fail in that way. You must, with intentionality, look to put them into scenarios where that can be trained upon, where that can be addressed. And so what does that look like? Well, training materials, role playing with them, getting them to say out loud, like, okay, you and me, pretend I'm the employee and you have to address me doing a poor job. I didn't meet expectations. What do you say to me? Walk them through that. Give them the practice. You have to beat the calendar by scheduling it, by making sure that you intentionally put them into those trainable moments.
So Nathan, when I hear all of this here, I think back to the early days of my career, and I think of the leaders who coached me and developed me, and I can definitely think of a few bad examples, but I can also think of some really good examples and some amazing leaders that we'd have coaching conversations, and whether they were scheduled or whether they were, reactive to a certain, a moment of whatever it might be. And in the conversations that I had with some of those best memorable leaders that I had, I walked out as an employee, as a team member, walking out of those meetings feeling better about myself than I did even walking into it. And it may have been a disciplinary conversation. It may have been a verbal warning in this circumstance, whatever it was. And I walked out not only knowing what I did and knowing what I need to do next time. And I'm thinking, kind of very, very early on as a frontline team member, or maybe in very early days of leadership, but also genuinely kind of walking taller too, which is in direct contrast to other instances where you walk out feeling like you've got a 500-pound boulder on your back, or that you're just like submerged in mud of just like, I feel like I am the worst human being there is. I have felt both of those in those instances, and it is the leader, it is the conversation, and you use the word intentionality. I think that's arguably probably the one of the most important, powerful words within that led to those. And I've always looked back to those and tried to say, okay, trying to dissect those conversations of why did those go very well? And I think that's probably the question that I'm leading to here with that.
Yeah, well, let me ask you a couple scenarios then. Do you believe that it went well because of how the conversation was handled in the moment? Or did it also have to do with who was delivering that message to you?
Probably both, if that's an acceptable answer. In
Totally
how,
acceptable.
in the moment, kind of reacting to a certain circumstance, but also the individual and the way that they were delivering it.
And so, follow-up question, the individual, did you feel that that person wanted you to succeed?
Yes.
How did they show you that they wanted you to succeed?
If I can think about that now, I have to really think, back here. I remember a certain phrase, and here's a phrase that stood out that I was like, oh, file that for later on, which was, I normally expect more from you. And that indicated that the circumstance that we're talking about doesn't reflect the standard that the leader knows that I have.
Okay, and so did that leader ever bring to your attention moments where they observed you doing well?
Likely, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes, and what I coach people on and is this idea of make sure that you establish a reputation as a leader for catching people doing good. That you are constantly stating what good looks like and then bringing to everyone's attention when people meet that expectation or exceed it. So you do that more often, more often, more often. And then when you say to somebody, hey, Josh, can we have a talk? There's an area where I could see you improving. Like you're so going to be so much more receptive to a person who has already established proof that they watch the good you do and notice the good you do, rather than somebody who they don't know me. Like they're even a leader on another team. Like how do they know if I'm doing a good job or not? And now they're just going to nitpick me and pull me apart and like point out the bad that I'm doing? No, forget about that. I'm not listening to that. And that is unfortunately oftentimes the advice that leaders are given is to give people constructive criticism without, though, establishing a reputation for recognizing the good. And so in that receiver's mind, they see that person as only looking out for the bad, only looking for mistakes. And it becomes, like you described, it becomes that boulder on your shoulder, because if that person has the perceived reputation of only pointing out the negative, boy, oh boy, even if you follow their criticism to the nth degree and you're like, I got 100%, I did it great this time, I'm sure of it. The opinion is, well, that person's still going to find something wrong with what I did. Why even try? I can't possibly live up to their standards, their expectations, because they know they're only going to see the negative. And so we've been sold a really bad analogy when it comes to giving people constructive criticism, which is the compliment sandwich, where it's like, hey, come here, let me tell you something nice about you. But then I'm going to, so it's kind of like tricking the dog into the car with a treat and then being like, now we're going to the vet, ha. And then like the dog hates it, and you just punish that individual. And then it's like, but you want to soften the blow by another compliment. Like that just feels like trickery. And it's not received well. Either you don't hear the compliments, you only hear the criticism, or if you're like a little bit off kilter, you only hear the two compliments and you don't hear the criticism. And you walk out being like, I'm doing great. I got two compliments. I don't even need to work on that third one, whatever it was. So my recommendation and what I coach people on is like, adopt a better sandwich. Like adopt the Oreo cookie sandwich, where it is cookie, good. Like icing filling, frosting filling, even better, especially if it's mega stuff or double stuff. And then another cookie, like that's awesome. Establish that you compliment people, you catch them doing good over and over and over and over. Establish that as your culture. We recognize good. We clearly state what is good or what is excellent. And so what standard you're going to be held to, because we're constantly acknowledging the good and the excellent. So be that. And then when somebody doesn't, when they fall short, and you, like we said, pull them aside, say, hey, Josh, can we talk? There's something I need you to work on. It's like, yes, please tell me so that I can leap into that stratus of being good or excellent, because I trust the words coming out of your mouth, because you know what good looks like. You know what excellent is, because you're constantly talking about it and pointing it out, so I can trust you and you're going to get me there.
I'm so glad you brought up trust there, Nathan, because this is what I'm thinking as you're saying all that is it really kind of harkens back to the trust bank concept where all those compliments and the recognition and saying, you did a great job, that's all putting deposits into the trust bank. And then when you need to make a withdrawal, you're not going into a negative balance, right? You're going into oh, okay, I get it. My boss has some constructive feedback for me. Great, I'm open to hearing it because there's already this level of trust. There's already this level of relationship there. So loved everything you said there, and certainly agree that this all stems from and builds trust. But I also want to turn the page, pun intended, because you have a great book called Empowering Kindness. And I think it's important that we talk a little bit about that, because kindness, and I'll let you say more, but kindness isn't always what we think it is. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about how that book came about and some of your key messages.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So the book came about because I was working for a long time with a software company, and I was in charge of kind of the people side of acquisition. So every time they acquired a company, I was in charge of company culture and making sure that those people got immediately brought in and got to participate in culture, got their voices heard, so they don't just get like left in kind of a corner. You know how that can sometimes happen in acquisitions, where people are like, hey, it was great news, and then we were forgotten about. And so getting people involved right away. And part of that was also speaking on company culture often. And so a big piece of what I then took out of there was I was speaking all the time on it, and I started developing a bunch of materials for it. And then I was faced with a very difficult dilemma in life. And I was told that I was no longer needed. And so I was left home, working through this and sorting through it in my mind while still going to work every day and delivering messages on company culture, and yet knew that I had an ending date in the near future. So it was a very bizarre circumstance. And whenever you're in a bizarre circumstance like that, you start questioning things. You start wondering, like, what is true? What is right? You're, as to quote Mugatu, I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. They're all just one look. And so I'm left wondering, like, where's the right in this? Like, how am I, as a father and a husband who wants to provide for my family, supposed to, and I'm using air quotes here, play the game? The corporate game of keeping your job and keeping your nose clean and moving forward so you don't lose your job. And so I thought to myself, do I have to play this game, like a popularity contest or whatever? And so at that time, my oldest kids, they were just toddlers. And I would lay down with them at night. And so this thought just kept rattling through my head of what is right. And I kept going back to, I couldn't shake it. I kept going back to my dad being a letter carrier in Canada and knowing everyone on his route, and many days coming home after walking 10 plus miles to deliver mail in snow or the rain or whatever. And he would change into an old t-shirt, paint splattered jeans, get a toolbox, get me, and we'd go back out on his route and help people. And we did it a lot. And I could not shake that as being my, like, just penultimate isn't the right word, but my absolute example of how to treat others and how to be an actual leader. And so my thought was, I will never play a corporate game. I will always walk into every situation asking myself, how do I treat the person across the table from me right? How do I treat the person who's shoulder to shoulder with me right? How do I do this? And as I went back through all of the content I had been creating for thought leadership content and culture and teamwork, the one theme that went through all of it was kindness. And so that's how I came up with the idea of the book. And if you don't mind me sharing, I'm a person of faith. I believe in God. I study my Bible, and there's a passage that says God created us, and He created good works that we should walk in them. And so that was also ringing through my head, that if that is true, then shouldn't there be some modern evidence that when we do good for others, great things happen? And so I started diving even deeper into scientific research to look at medical studies to see if we're in an environment of kindness, or if we are doing good for others, do we benefit from that? And the studies just revealed the most amazing things, like almost superpower-esque type stuff, where if you're in an environment that's lacking kindness, you're over 2.5 times as likely to develop heart disease. And those who perform acts of kindness for others, who are in an environment of kindness, 100% of people studied experience some positive sensation, and even a certain percentage of them describe their positive sensation as having fewer aches and pains. Like, how is that even possible, that me doing something nice for you or good for you can cause me to physically actually feel better? And it's because of how we're designed. We are designed to be kind. And I'll share one other quick study. They took a group of students and they split them in half. And one of them had to watch a video of something boring like grass growing. And obviously they didn't see a change in their physicality or anything like that. But then they had another group, the other half, watch a video of Mother Teresa taking care of the sick and the suffering. And what they found was that the people who watched Mother Teresa, just a video of it even, that their immune system levels were boosted and remained elevated for a full hour after seeing that. Like, our bodies are designed to recognize good and to kick in high gear positive chemicals. And so by creating an environment of kindness where people can be kind or they're surrounded by it, then you are causing your people to perform at their peak performance. You're pulling positivity out of them. And it was just an amazing thing to discover that there's just tons and tons and tons of proof that it is the right way to do things for people.
This is so interesting. I love hearing just the science behind it and the results from it. My question for you, though, is it's going to be kind of a loaded question here. And it simply is, what is kindness? And the reason I ask this is because, pulling back on this, you've built this personal brand of kindness. And when I think about that, I think of just, well, that is a very broad topic, or it is a trait that, we should just already have that. Well, we hire kind people. Of course we hire kind people. We all have to be kind to each other, right? I feel like on the surface level, that's probably where a lot of people live. When I think of, well, who else do I think of who's kind of built a brand on kindness? I think of Ted Lasso, actually, is what I think of. Okay, that connects with that, and that is his thing. And, well, obviously fictional character, and that is what the character is based on, and being able to deliver that, and probably seeing the scientific benefits of doing it through sports and through success and victory from that standpoint. But how do you define that in a way that is able to be maybe digested with more substance than kind of the surface level, where we're kind, we're nice to each other?
Yeah, and it should never be surface level. So that's right off the bat, you got to dispel that. Yeah. Another piece that you said that I want to dispel is you can't just assume that people come in being kind. Your brand of kindness is different for every situation that you want to establish within your organization. You have to be crystal clear of what that looks like. And you also need to equip your people to be able to deliver on it. And so you never want to just cross your fingers and hope that people know how to be kind to your guests. If you want your guests treated in a specific way, you got to outline that, you got to train for it, and you got to equip people to be able to pull it off. Going back even further to peel it back and talk about like what I say when I'm talking about being kind is, you're right. I think a lot of people confuse it with just being nice. And it's not about being nice. Nice is often about popularity. Well, I don't want them to be mad at me. I don't want them to not like me. That isn't kindness. Kindness takes strength, bravery, and wisdom to execute upon. And so it starts with empathy, where you have the vision to see the needs in others, where you can recognize where they might have possible shortcomings. But then kindness is the gap that it takes the strength to fulfill those needs in others. And kindness calls upon us with our, personal fortitude, the strength that we have within us from past experiences where we built upon seeing. And I love, Josh, that you brought up, like, I can remember leaders who did it right, and I can remember leaders who they missed the mark. And so pulling on that is part of our strength. Our capability to deliver for others comes from our personal experiences as well. And then it takes also bravery. We talked about difficult conversations, stepping into the gap and talking to people and saying, hey, this is where I could see you growing. I use this example of when I was a kid, there was a family from church whose son passed away. Flash forward decades later, and there was another family at church, and their daughter had an accident where she slipped and she fell in the pool. And people didn't get to her rescue right away because they didn't know it had happened. And so the paramedics had to come, they pulled her out. Thankfully, she was okay. But the people who stepped in to comfort that young couple were the older couple who experienced the loss of a child. Like no one could have delivered comfort like they could have, because they experienced it. But was it easy? Of course not. Like, think about how hard that would be to not only relive that pain or to put yourself in a place where you're trying to comfort people who are in pain, but then also the twisted scenario where like they lost their child, but this child is surviving and going to be okay. And yet they're still stepping into that gap. And so it takes a lot of strength. It takes bravery, because we're going to have to be vulnerable. And then it also takes wisdom. And the wisdom is recognizing when, and I love that you brought up Ted Lasso, because, aren't sports coaches just the best at knowing when they need to give that locker room speech, like in Miracle, where he's like, I want you to be a hockey player, or when they are comforting to someone who needs a little bit of grace, who needs a little bit more patience, who needs to pull the temperature down in the room to help that person. And so wisdom is definitely knowing when to either apply pressure or when to relieve that pressure. And then the wisdom is also knowing when you need to use your strength to be kind and like do something for someone, or use your wisdom to be kind and put the responsibility on that person's shoulder. And so going back to the misconception of kindness too, I use the example of my kids. There's a billboard that we drive by on I-75 just outside of Ocala, Florida, when we're driving north. And it is a big billboard that says, all you can eat candy buffet. My kids want to eat there. They want to eat there for every meal. Now, if I use the surface level idea of kindness, I could be like, yes, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, candy buffet. But no, that is not the kindest thing to do for them. And so I have to step into that gap and use my wisdom to understand that I have to say no at times in order to help them grow appropriately. And so using that strength, bravery, wisdom, that's where kindness is. It's knowing when to carry the load for somebody and when to put it on their shoulders and expect them to mature and step up. Sometimes that's like the biggest thing for people, where a leader can see something in someone else, but they're a little too nervous to step out on their own. And sometimes the leader needs to be like, no, you go. You be the one to present. You did the work. I want you to speak to the executives on this project. I'll be there. I'll support you. I'll field any questions. If I see, I'll let you try and take the question. But if I see that you're a little nervous, all you got to do is look at me. Boom, I'm there. I'll cover it for you. And you're just kind of inching out that freedom for them. You're helping them bear it a little bit more. So you're spotting them in the gym, basically, so you can help them increase their bench press. You're there to help them grow, is the basic premise of being kind.
Yeah. Well, and as I'm hearing you say that, I'm connecting the dots back to your story about your dad and doing what's right. And I'm definitely connecting the right and the kindness in terms of how you're putting that together. And what I find a lot is the people that I work with, in their heart of hearts, they know what's right. And they know that this is what I should do, but there's something getting in the way. Maybe that bad leader that Josh talked about, somebody who's not setting the right example. Maybe there's a fear of retribution or something. Even though they know it's the right thing to do, there's something standing in their way. So I love the fact that you're putting it in terms of, kindness and all those steps that you just outlined. So thank you so much for that. We are kind of winding down on the time that we have today, Nathan. It's been an amazing conversation, but I can't let you go without asking you about fancy soda. So what is your favorite fancy soda?
So right now I am really into limited edition Mountain Dew flavors. And so this past summer, Mountain Dew came out with a pineapple flavor that they stocked at Dollar General only. And so I felt really special, almost like a sneakerhead who gets the limited release Air Jordans. I'm like, I got my pineapple Mountain Dew. At Walmart, they had Summer Freeze, which is like those red, white, and blue popsicles. It's supposed to be that flavor. And they also had a dragon fruit version at Walmart and all that sort of stuff. So I went out, I did one Saturday morning, I did a loop through town and stopped off to get a couple cases of my favorites. And then I hide them away so that my kids aren't drinking them all on me. And so I would say, though, my top favorite right now is the Summer Freeze, which it's gone. It's not in stores anymore. So,
oh, man, it's in the vault.
It is. I have a few cans hidden.
That is so fascinating. That and everything else leading up to that as well. So Nathan, we really appreciate your time today. I feel like we blinked and our time has come up, like Matt said, close to the end here. But if people want to learn more about Empowering Kindness or get a hold of you directly, where would you send them?
Yeah, so I'd say email me. My email address is Nathan@Empowering Kindness. I have a website, empoweringkindness.com. But I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn if you want to spot me there. And so, yeah, invite anyone and everyone to reach out. Happy to have conversations.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much for being here. It was a wonderful conversation, as all of ours are. And I'm so excited that we were able to get you on the show. So thank you again for your time. And for everybody out there who's watching and listening, just remember, we are all attraction pros.